Clubhouse.
Welcome back to Escaping Gilead. This is for the 4th episode of the first season. This one was called Green Tea. I think I know why it's called Green Tea, but what do you think?
This is Caroline.
Oh yeah, this is Paul.
I don't know. Is this in reference to the jasmine tea mishap at the tea party? Or we got something else?
I think it's more straightforward.
Oh, like it's a green tea. Like it's a tea party for the greens.
Since they're honoring the ants' preparation for them to become wives, to become greens.
Right.
Then it's green tea. It's the tea for the greens.
I'm with you. You know what, Paul? I need to do a little bit of housekeeping before we totally jump into green tea, because I did a quick rewatch and I picked up a couple little nuggets and I read a couple different interviews that I wanted to throw this out here.
This is important stuff. So
yeah. So for one, whether it matters to anybody else, it mattered to me. I wanted to know what state they were in, and for some reason, when we watched, again, you guys, we have screeners. We have not watched ahead of this episode. We watch an episode and watch and record, so that any of our predictions are not in any way messed up by having seen ahead. However, on our screeners, I did not have closed caption turn on. And for me, I sometimes miss little details. So the last time we had seen Agnes or heard about her, she had been moved to Colorado. Very much this landscape did not look like Colorado to me. So finally, I was like rewatching and I heard her say they live in Maryland. So, okay, Maryland, for anyone who did not catch that. Another nugget from the interviews, we had been guessing this was like 10 years in the future. No, we were counting wrong. Like 10 from when Hannah got snatched would be more accurate. So more like 4 is what Elizabeth Moss says from the end of Handmaids. So only 4 years ahead. Why does this matter? Because that is tremendously different ages for what everybody thinks out there. The theory that's been running around is that Daisy is Nicole. We know where that's coming from. We know that that comes from the book. We know that that is also a lot of the looks that June has been giving her. And I'm going to put out there the casting. When you watch the two of them walk down the hallway together at the hospital, they have like the exact same walk, the exact same shoulders and sort of width and all different parts to them, the way that they're walking. I feel like we were supposed to draw like genetic
similarity
connections between the two of them. So I mean, they were doing a good job of leading us to the concept that it could be Nicole, but Bruce Miller has come out definitively saying this is not Nicole. And now with the 4-year information from the end of Handmaids, remember, Nicole was only just a little toddler. She was maybe 18 months or something, and you guys can check me on that math if you like, but she was small enough to be in a crib, small enough to be like very much a baby who was crying and needed like constant care and everything. So the idea that 4 years later she would be this character, Daisy, impossible. So those were my couple of housekeeping things. Did you have anything that you read, saw, or have realized that you want to quick on the first 3?
No, those were important things because we hadn't read that stuff
guessing.
And we were leaning into the book source material as a basis for our predictions. And I'm still kind of holding out some hope that they're lying.
It's just then the time frame wouldn't work at all.
No, it wouldn't.
They would have to lie 2 times. They would have to lie on the 4 years, and they would have to be lying on the Daisy is Nicole. Do you think it is enough stakes to, if Daisy is not Nicole, is it enough stakes that Gilead killed her parents as the reason why she would have all this buy-in with Mayday?
You know, ordinarily, I don't look for familial connections to be just like overrunning the TV shows that I watch, even though they do. It sometimes feels kind of lazy, you know, like Rey in Star Wars becoming Palpatine's granddaughter. Like it didn't really work. And in other times it doesn't really work, except for to create more drama. However, in this case, I think it only makes sense if somehow we know her parents.
I don't know who this could possibly be, though. I've seen other people guessing that maybe she was a kid on the Angel flight, and maybe that's a possibility. Again, why
Still not
she
enough
would
time.
be.
No, those were grown
No,
kids.
because there was a variety.
Yeah, that's right.
Rita was holding like a maybe a toddler, maybe an infant, maybe like I'm gonna go with like an 8-9 month old in her arms. But there was definitely little kids. Remember that little kid said like, "Can I wear my clothes that I want to wear now?" Something like that. Remember when she got off the plane and she could have been like 5 years old, maybe something like that. So there was a variety of ages on the Angel flight, and the Angel flight kids would be known kids who Gilead would 100% want back because of the whole embarrassment of them being snatched the way that they were.
I think having her be that child of a handmaid that we knew, not very many of them survived, but that just fits fine with the way that this story is unfolding. But I think it matters if she's related to somebody we knew.
Josh Charles is a handmaid that he brought in when Serena Joy was like, remember, like wedding night, and he like shows it. Remember they said she had a lot of kids.
Yeah, she was a sure thing, they said.
Again, this is like super reaching, super trying to figure out like little connections, but like I wonder if like she having had a lot of kids, she's like one of the few, because most of the handmaids that we actually met and got to know, at best we saw them have one, and that was their one. You know, we had Charlotte with Janine, and like there wasn't somebody who had a kid 5 or 6 or 7 or more years ago who could have been actually born in Gilead. So this kid is a special kid, like somehow born in Gilead, got out, Mayday knows about her, all the things. That's what's leaning me towards that Angel flight. It's still kind of a loose connection to the group in a lot of ways, because it's not like June knew all the kids that were on the Angel flight, but those kids would be on Rita's radar. You know, she would have known all the kids that would have been on the flight, I'm sure, because of all the other Marthas that were helping to get out of Gilead. So I don't know. That's what I got. But I'm with you that I really want more connection to Daisy. I want to figure it out.
Yeah.
Given the time frame, where do you think we are in our timeline?
I think we are a week or two within the last episode. Little things seem to tell us that time has advanced, you know, like the tea that they're going to do. All of that choreography of the girls bringing in the tea and pouring the tea and putting in the sugar and all the other things that they did in the milk, all of that would require so much practice. And like the green cloaks that the kind of the transitioning plums are wearing, I'm sure those were all, you know, tailored and all that. So I don't know if they have like a Walmart for for
just
transitioning.
a 24-hour seamstress shop.
So I think little things like that tell us that some short period of time has passed.
I think it's kind of interesting that there was this sense of like, and this came up in episode 3, about the idea of there being like a season, basically like intruded in on your season is what Agnes says to Becca. And I was thinking about that, like I wonder if they just marry them off like once a year. Like if you got your period within the last 9 months, then we have, you know, like our, whatever our ceremonies are, whatever our, like you do your dunking baptism routine and all that stuff when it happens, but like the actual like presenting of the tea, because there were so many girls that were all doing the tea.
I bet you're right.
Like not everybody got their period that month, you know, for the first time.
I think an upcoming episode will show, and I haven't seen it, I've just seen like little like thumbnails for them. Title. But I bet that there is some kind of debutante ball that is not for debutantes. It is for wife perusal of the commanders. Because I remember there's a scene where Becca and Agnes are practicing dancing, and it's because that's going to be part of that. They've got to be ready to do those dances. You ever watch any kind of show that takes place in like Victorian times or some long ago time, and you see the entire room seems to know the dance? This is how it happens. They teach each other it while no one's looking.
You know, I'm going to throw this out there because it's sort of about the season part and everything. On my rewatch of it, when Agnes is crossing that garden bridge area outside, it was completely making me think of Girl Scouts. Because when you go from brownies to Girl Scouts, you cross a literal bridge. Like they actually have you do that. And I was thinking about the different colors and stuff that we use. The littlest Girl Scouts are called daisies, and they're the youngest. They're like the tiniest, youngest ones. Before you become a brownie, you're a daisy, and you wear royal blue, and then you're a brownie and you wear brown, and then when you become a Girl Scouts, you wear green. And so there was something about all that just, I have no idea if that was any influence on Margaret Atwood. I know that there's a lot of talk that and tons of interviews that show that every single thing that happens in the book is based on things that happened in real life, in the real world, which people are always shocked about. And I've actually seen on our Facebook group,
The Handmaid's Tale, Gilead Online.
If you want to come join us over there, we have like 40,000 members. I've seen people kind of like arguing that point, like, are you crazy that like all this stuff really happened in real life? Like they're acting like history is only what's happening right now this week and in whatever country they're in and what happens in their own neighborhood. And it's like, yeah, that Margaret Atwood has said that a million times in plenty of interviews, that she took this from all around the world and all of different cultures and all different times. So I believe her when she says that. I believe she did her research. So I wonder if Girl Scouts came into play at all and in any of these colors and any of this ceremonial things. It was, I don't know, it was something that caught my eye.
I've watched several of the segments from Margaret Atwood's masterclass, and let me just say to the people that are trying to fact check her, you're not smarter than her. I don't care who's listening to this. You're not smarter than her.
I love that. I think that Miss Atwood deserves our respect. She has clearly done her research and has an amazing, I don't want to say exactly imagination, because that would sort of undercut the idea that these are real things. But I feel like her creativity of how to create a world, combining all these things from different times and different cultures and different historical events, I think is remarkable. And yeah, you're right. She's a very smart woman.
On two unrelated notes, I am currently listening to a completely different trilogy of novels written by Margaret Atwood, set in a kind of semi-apocalyptic future that has nothing to do with The Handmaid's Tale. And she tells it completely differently, and it is just as engrossing.
What was the name of that one?
It's called the Mad Adam trilogy. Like if you made Adam sort of like a palindrome, so it's like Mad Adam. And it's about this guy that decided to end the world, so he did, and just the survivors of that plague that he caused. It's just a fascinating trilogy of books. Anyhow, the second unrelated thing is last week we had wondered aloud what it is that happens to the boys in Gilead. And when you mentioned the rite of passage from Brownie to Girl Scout, it reminded me of something that happened in Cub Scouts where we were, I guess, when you come in, you're like a bobcat. So when you become a wolf, I think it is, that it's like you're more of a full Cub Scout at that point rather than just sort of testing the waters. And you mentioned crossing a bridge. What my troop guy did was he had us walk over something also. He blindfolded us, but before we were blindfolded, we could see that he was dumping out a bucket full of broken glass onto a bed sheet. And then he had us walk over that. And little did we know afterwards, when we take off the blindfold, that they've taken away the glass and they've replaced it with Doritos.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I love it. I love that. That's so funny.
That was a pretty traumatizing moment.
but also kind of like, but you must have felt so proud of yourself that you were brave enough to step on it and go across and everything. And I mean, that sense of pride must have been huge. I mean, really funny when you realize it's not, but I mean, you know.
I bet in Gilead they make the boys walk on the glass.
Oh, I bet so too. No doubt. No Doritos for you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, let's talk a little bit more about the world building that we had going on here. So
they were subtle things, but we did get some things.
So we saw in the previous episode about the plums wearing the green cloaks, but now we see that they actually wear them over their plum dress at school. So these are kind of transitionary outfits. It seems like it's like from plum to night. Like you have your cloak and it's like your evening look, your grown-up look is kind of mixed in with your teenage look, if you will. I thought that was a great ad. I was a little surprised that they were walking to that tea party for like 10,000 reasons. I felt like it was weird because it seemed like you would get like sweaty in that woolen kind of clothes and you were going to a party, so that you're very much going to be judged on like what you look like, and I would say your scent if you smelled like sweat. And also, just like knowing how far Agnes's house seems to be from like the main road, like that seemed like it could be like a 1/4 mile walk just to go up her side, like her driveway and to actually get into the house. So I don't know. Were you surprised that they were walking? I mean, I know they needed them to encounter the hanging Mayday people. And I would like to know the little bit of hair that was kind of coming out from under the hood. It definitely had sort of a similar look to Melanie, her adoptive mom. It had sort of a reddish hue with like a little curly kind of thing to it. I don't know. It very much reminded me of her mom's hair.
I think with the shades on the plum bus, and we needed to freak out Daisy in this episode, I think that's the real function of the walk, is just that, because they do have the plum bus and they were needing to like move like flowers and stuff, right?
Yeah, they were carrying all those items that they had just gotten at the florist. So yeah, I don't know. I just found it a little bit. I would not walk to a party, is what I guess I'm saying.
Maybe the walk is
if I
part
had to
of
be
it.
judged.
I
Maybe
don't
it
know.
is. That's a good question. Maybe it is. Maybe it's some sort of like, if you can't do this part, then you're not ready, because that seems to be the theme of everything.
Right, no blisters.
Right. What did you think about the commanders, like sending these like gift baskets and like food and everything to sort of woo these girls?
I wonder if the commanders even know that what it is that they send tells a story about them. If it's really good stuff that the girl likes, then that's one message. If it's other cheaply available stuff, then that's another message. It's sort of like bear with heart on Valentine's Day.
Right. Agreed.
It's an interesting little facet of their world that I hope people picked up on was that those baskets told the girls what they might be able to expect from their commander, like where they come from, given what's in the basket, what their stature is, given what they were able to get a hold of and put in the basket.
Definitely their reach for sure, right? And their power, the tenderloin whole thing, and the scarcity of different foods and all that stuff was definitely there. But what was interesting about that to me is that we have been told that the ants arrange the marriages. So the idea that the commanders would feel any need to woo these girls in any way, I don't know if I found that heartening or not, because it kind of made me feel like, okay, well, they actually want to be liked by these girls, which has not been a prerequisite for marriage thus far in Gilead. Nobody cares whether you like the commander you get paired with. That's not a part of this. So the fact that, like, I know you're kind of joking about bear with heart, but even that boyfriend cares that he's showing something, even if it's not very imaginative or thoughtful. It's like there's still some amount of like, I don't know if to say like vulnerability that you're being seen by the commanders, that like they actually care. They are trying to put their best foot forward in some way. I didn't think they gave a care at all.
I think you're right that the ants ultimately make the decisions, but I think the commanders, they put their best foot forward. Like maybe if the girl feels strongly about them, and the commander chooses them, maybe that might overwhelm sort of an ant's wishy-washy decision. Or, I'm sure some decisions, some placements are like, it's almost like royalty, where it's like this daughter has to go with that commander, that sort of thing. But I think there's a lot of lesser commanders out there that it's not as important who they're paired with.
Do you think that maybe the baskets are really so Commander Mackenzie sees them? Like, is it sort of like maybe not a wooing of the girls? Maybe I'm drawing that conclusion incorrectly? Is it something like some sort of like you can see, Mr. Mackenzie or Commander Mackenzie, that I am trying to be a good fellow commander with you. I'm trying to show some respect to your family, like that kind of thing. And maybe even for the ants, because they are displayed on the table at the ants' tea, you know, like it's all laid out there. So is it also for the ants to see like which commanders maybe have interest or which commanders maybe are willing to go above and beyond? Because there wasn't 100 baskets there. I would say there was probably less than, you know, maybe 10 or less. And so in that case, this might be an indicator to the ants of like, we're the ones who are really looking for a wife. And we kind of, maybe it's their own trying to curry favor with their ants from afar.
Yeah, I think it's both of those things. Although I think the role of Commander Mackenzie and any commander father at this stage in their daughter's placement in society, I think it's really diminished at this point. I think maybe a commander with enough sway could potentially override an ant for placement, but I think it would take a lot of pull. Even though the ants don't have like the same kind of official status as commanders, they do not outrank the commanders, but they still have a lot of sway. Anyway, so like in that moment when we saw Daisy with the commander and he was just kind of hiding in his room, and he expressed concern about Agnes by asking if she's happy. I think that implied to me that this part of it, he's pretty much not involved in anymore. And he he laments that.
He does. And you know what? Okay, so that entire scene, which we definitely have to talk about because I was scared out of my wits for Daisy, and I saw him in the corner. And I just was like, oh my God, like I saw him well before she saw him. And oh my God, I jumped out of my skin. His behavior was extremely comforting to me and a gigantic relief. I mean, when he uncrosses his legs and stands up and buttons his coat, I thought, oh God, what are we going to see here? What is he going to do? And the tone of his voice when he asks, is she happy? I mean, my heart almost broke. I really, for as much as we all hate Gilead, and we do, and we hate how Agnes got to Commander Mackenzie, it is very clear that he cares about her and loves her. And the idea that all this time he's been bringing chocolates and presents back from his travels, and, you know, that now he's sad that those days are over and that she doesn't really even appreciate them anymore. But even more so, this tea, he's not downstairs, you know, dealing with the tea or anything. He's holed up in his office, kind of chain smoking, feeling like crap. And there's something about that. It rings so real for real dads, you know, maybe on their wedding day. I remember Father of the Bride. Remember there's times when Steve Martin is literally just like imagining her playing basketball or walking down the stairs or sliding down the stair rail, stuff like that as like a kid. And he's having all this like, I can't believe that my little girl is growing up and going to be leaving and all that stuff. I felt it. I felt like that scene, which could have played out so bad and so horrible for Daisy. And I was waiting for the cruel torture to begin or some awful punishment. I could not even imagine. But thankfully, instead, we got some really amazing character development for Mackenzie.
I wonder if we might get kind of a broader view of Gilead and the people that make up Gilead in this show compared to Handmaids. Maybe not. I don't know. But there's a certain amount of like humanizing that scene did where, say, contrasting with the book, he's not even a character. He just never shows up. He's so not involved with what Agnes is doing that it's implied that he's just fine with whatever Paula decides to do with her.
Well, I like the change then. I'm glad that they made one of the parents invested and caring and feeling, you know, even though it's still awkward, a lot of the stuff that goes on in their society is still very awkward and odd and weird. And the whole commander's meeting, kneeling in front of him was all weird and gross. This moment felt very human, very universal. You know, I really appreciate it.
It makes the show a little more complex. Like last week when we saw all the men leering at Agnes in the commander's workroom, it would be super, super easy for Bruce and the gang to just paint every commander with the same swastika colored brush, you know?
Absolutely.
But I think it's way more interesting to have people that just are, yes, they are from Gilead, and yes, they have some rank. But if you were just looking at them, you'd say that's just a regular person
that actually cares about his child.
Right.
And again, even though, you know, we're all raising our eyebrow about how he got her, definitely seems to care. And I appreciated that. There was another little nugget we got from the world building stuff, that it's rude to ask about a person's birth. The whole idea of like, who's your mom now? Who's your birth mom? Did you have like a before mom? What, all the different parts to this? I thought that was a cool like cultural nugget to add in there, that like they don't just ignore it and it isn't like an instant like lose your tongue for saying something about it. It's just rude. And I was like, okay, all right, I see what you did there, Gilead.
Well, I think, believe it or not, even though they have the handmaids, I think that there's actually kind of a stigma having been born from a handmaid, because they regard the handmaids as whores.
Wow, okay, yeah.
So the easier way to deal with that is nobody ask.
And we just don't talk about it at all.
Yeah,
it's just not cool.
Right, exactly.
Well, it was nice that they layered that in. And it was a nice little bonding moment between Daisy and Agnes for them to have had lost their moms and have that moment of, okay, I'm sorry. Like, we actually have more in common than we think we do. Let's get into Daisy more, because this was another episode where it was from Daisy's point of view for the most part. It was a little split. I mean, we definitely got some Agnes point of view for sure, but I appreciated the more Daisy building, because I feel like she's the one that's more of a mystery.
Her character is way more complex. She has these thoughts that are way different than what she has to do and say. Whereas Agnes, I'm pretty sure she's doing what she thinks she's supposed to be doing. And we got a little bit more sense of how sharp she is and her sense of humor, like with the opening monologue about her pro tips for marriage season. What was it? Kiss the asses of the ants, and that'll curry their favor.
She had more colorful language. She was like the sadists and all that kind of stuff. She said, she didn't just say the ants.
Yeah.
But she had more colorful language. You're right. It did give us a glimpse more into her personality. We got more her humor. Her, I could kill for a Big Mac right now. You know, all those types of comments definitely came flying through. We also found out a lot more about how embedded she is with Mayday, and or how little she knows about who else is in Mayday. Like the whole florist scene when we're doing all the prepping for the party, and that florist comes running over, knows that Daisy is a Mayday agent for one, and says, you know, like, I got to get out of here. You got to tell Garth to move me. They're like on to me, all this stuff. And of course, we find out the fate of the florist at the end of the episode. She's eventually shot while trying to run when there's like a raid on her shop. The whole thing that we find out that Garth is actually that guardian who works for Agnes, who is smoking outside. And that he, as young as that boy is, that 12-year-old looking boy is in charge of this group over here. I was like, okay, like, I mean, I know we got the bit when, you know, when the bus accident whole thing happens, that whole whatever we're calling it, shootout. I know we knew he was involved, but now we find out that he's like much more involved, like that the florist knew about Garth, and the florist was asking for Garth, that boy, to move her. What did you think about all of that and Daisy's sort of assessment of what's going on with Mayday? And at this point, would you just be like, I am done, like Daisy is right at this point?
I would be as scared as she is, for sure. I don't know that by the end of this one, her resolve is pretty well strengthened to not get caught. So she's going to try to be more careful and whatever it is that she needs to do to fit in so that nobody sniffs her out. However, we saw the hangings. We heard of the woman getting shot. That woman was so desperate that she came up to Daisy in the open and spoke openly about what they were doing. Could you imagine? I mean, hey, you're a spy. Shut up.
No, I know you, but you know what? That's where the other part about like, drawing parallels to June. There was a lot of times when me and you would be like, June is like freaking walking around in like an untouchable bubble. Like no one else could get away with talking so loud, being so overt, like jiggling that girl's bed, putting the supplies away in the sleeping area, like all those types of things. Like June would do stuff like that too, where other handmaids would be caught immediately or other people would be caught immediately. Daisy definitely has a bit of a bubble around her. Even going into the commander's office, anybody else who had done that in the show probably would have faced severe disciplinary consequences. And she faced none. And so I'm curious if that force field, I think we did call it a force field actually in our previous podcasts. I wonder if that is extended to Daisy again, sort of making us be like, are they related in some way? Is there going to turn out to be a connection more than just friends with your parents?
I forget if it was this episode or the last episode where she says, I want to talk to June. And he says, who's June?
Yeah.
I think the easiest and most obvious explanation is that they are functioning as what we would call a terrorist cell. And so they are a small group, whoever they are, Garth, Daisy, the former florist, and maybe other people in town. But in the event that they are captured, because of the way that they're organized, they probably get their orders through some secret messaging system, and they might not know where it came. The most that they know is whoever it was that recruited them into this.
And I would agree with you, because if you remember when they had the Radio Free Boston thing and they said like there's a drop at the barn, blah, 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 blah. They had different silly names and colors. So I think that you're 100% right. Like Garth just gets like a piece of paper, under his coffee saucer or something, at some place, and he just has to know to look there. Or maybe the florist would hide it in a bouquet of flowers or something like that, right? Something where, yes, someone knows something somewhere, but if they held your feet to the fire, literally, you wouldn't be able to name names.
In the book, they use something that, I don't know if it's real or not, but it was something called microdots. And it's the idea that there's this device that can print a complete message in something about the size of like a period on a piece of paper. And then with the right receiving device, you could magnify the message and read it as long as you knew that it was coming, obviously, because it's only the size of a period, so you wouldn't notice it. That's what Melanie and Neil were doing, and they got caught with that. But I wonder if microdots will make their way into the show.
Fascinating. Okay, I didn't know anything about that. Okay. All right. So we found out a little bit more about Mayday. She's definitely, at the end when she's doing her cleaning and everything, and she's trying to talk to herself about like, keep your shit together and how everybody else is keeping their shit together. And she's starting to have this, I don't know if it's true empathy, but she's starting to see things a little bit more from the girl's points of view, like Agnes's point of view, of saying like, I realize now that Agnes must be so scared, and yet on the outside she's keeping it together. And I think that was a big realization in this episode. I think the young green who trips because of Paula and her breakdown, and her actually saying, while this like isn't my world, this is as real as a heart attack to this group of people. That was a lot of eye-opening self-awareness and awareness of others and their world. She had a real growth moment in this whole episode of realizing that these girls are terrified as well, and their composure is not being smart or not being aware of their surroundings or not understanding the society in which they live in. They understand all those things and they keep their composure. And she actually seemed a little more respectful of them because of that.
It's still scaring the shit out of her, though. There was the voiceover toward the end where she is emphasizing that she's just not going to get caught. She's going to do everything she can to not get caught. But then the next thing that happens is the Radio Free Boston channel goes dead.
How disheartening was that?
Yeah.
Even as viewers, it was like, wait, what?
It's like when you make up your mind to do something hard, you need a little bit of time of it going correctly for you to feel any confidence about it. Whether it's a diet or some other habit that you want to try to change or something.
Or maybe a new job or something. Like you need those first days to go well so that you feel like you made a good choice.
So she gets done saying, I'm just not going to get caught. And then Radio Free Boston obviously gets caught.
Or something disrupted in some way.
And then she screams in the towel like, I can't stand this.
I'm so with you. I mean, but think about that stressful day between her having those realizations that like these girls' lives are this terrifying. They are literally shook in the kitchen about everything that happened over spilling some tea, all the things that she's putting together on top of seeing the hanging bodies, on top of getting caught by the commander in his office, on top of Garth being like, June who? And her realizing like, I truly have no connection to the outside world. Like I thought Garth was my connector. I thought Radio Free Boston was going to come in every night and I was going to stay connected. Like all of a sudden, and the florist dying, I mean, that shook her like crazy. Like Daisy went through it in this episode in terms of opening her eyes to what's really going on and how frightening this all is. You can be taught it in school. You can be told by Mayday what's going on, but to actually be witnessing it and getting close enough to these girls to start feeling their fears, start feeling their feelings and understanding like this is that serious. I was blowing it off and it is this serious. I'm no longer playing dress up. I'm behind enemy lines. And these girls are too in their own way. It was a big episode. And of course, Agnes has a huge episode with this dentist situation that we're going to get into. But let's hit the tea party here and what actually goes on, because there were some moments that I thought were both sweet, kind of unexpected, and just the nervousness of the mothers even was even a little bit surprising, I thought. So we have all this preparations. We're doing all this stuff. I thought it was very fascinating that Daisy thought it was kind of crap that these girls weren't the ones that were like baking the cookies or making the pies or doing the cakes or arranging the flowers or making the tea, but that they were like management for that. And she was really mocking that and being pretty snide about that. And I gotta say, I got a little butthurt about that because I fancy myself the manager of a household who have, I would never use the word staff, that's way too strong, but that's the kind of wording how they would use in Gilead, but who have a lot of people who I delegate to, who are helpers with my children, who are helping to maintain the house. There's a whole stable of people who I need for repairmen and maintaining the house and all this stuff. And like, I do manage all these things. And so the idea that I'm not the actual one who's always driving the kid to something, or I'm not always the one who is doing in particular, like repairing the kitchen sink, right? But I still have to make those calls and manage all that stuff. And she was acting like that's not a skill that's worthy of even paying attention to. And she was just chalking that up to like bossing around. I did not appreciate that because it's like, how do you think large enterprises of any sort, including families, are truly run? Like, and that kind of snideness, I appreciated after the fact. Again, I thought she kind of had like a change of heart and started to be like, oh, wait a minute, this is an actual thing, what they're doing. And even seeing their mothers, as terrified as they were, let her know like this management position is that serious and continues when you're a grown adult. You know, you don't grow out of this nervousness or fear.
I think as like how we said, Agnes seems to be presenting her voiceover from some point in the future. It feels like Daisy's is more of the moment.
I would agree with that. The Big Mac thing made me feel like this is of the right this second.
And so it's like her understanding, like you've described, of what's going on kind of evolved over the course of the episode. And so, like, for instance, when that girl completely freaked out over the color of the tea.
Yeah.
And that
slapped
seemed
it out of her hand, which I was like, girl, you're making it worse. Don't slap it out of her hand.
In the moment, it seemed like she's being a brat or some other kind of term that you would use for a person that does that. But we find out that the slightest miscue, the girls believe, will be interpreted as disrespect toward the aunts.
Well, and overall mismanagement of a household. And that is like that is what you're supposed to do as the wife. You are the manager of the household. And so if they place you with a commander who is highly ranked, in theory, he will be the most persnickety about the tea looking just perfect, the food being on the table, the children, the house, the Marthas, everything being run like with precision. So if you can't even get a simple cup of tea right, well, I'm not giving you to the highest commander. So that's where I thought this was all. That's how I viewed it all.
Yep.
It's like this was a display of your management skills and your hostessing skills. Like if you spilled at a dinner party that you had with diplomats from another country, you would make Gilead look foolish. You would make us look like we couldn't even serve a simple cup of tea without ruining it. There's stakes as much as the whole thing is a tea party, which is funny in and of itself in terms of like tea parties are for children, tea parties are and I know, don't get me wrong, there's tea like as in like high tea and stuff, which is of course not a childish thing, but they were referencing this more like a tea party, at least Daisy was, and in reality it was much more like high tea. Like this is like the epitome of showing your level of class, showing your sophistication, showing your level of management of your helpers that you brought with you to plan the party or plan the event or serve the food.
Given all the stakes involved, which Paula must be aware.
Oh, yes.
Why do you suppose she tripped that girl?
I think she felt she was giving Agnes a leg up, like literally with her leg. Like, I think she thought by having someone else look less than, that somehow that would kick Agnes up a couple spots, which I think is true.
Setting the low end of the curve.
I think so. And if the entire party went off without a hitch, they would almost have like no idea where anyone stood. Whereas this, I think it was pretty clear the girl who freaked out and slapped the tea out of, her Martha's hand, and the girl who trips, those are clearly like on the lower end of the curve. And so therefore, just because it's a curve, your girl gets to move up higher. That's what I think it was all about. You could see it on her face. I mean, she was telegraphing that she was going to do something. I just didn't know what. I didn't know if she was going to make a snide remark, something that would come off like a backhanded compliment or something. You could tell on her face she was looking for the opportunity to do something. I didn't think it was going to be to like physically trip a girl. I mean, that's some low crap to do.
And Paula's behavior for the rest of the episode was more characteristic of what we expected. She was cold and snappy and grabby. Like, for instance, when Agnes breaks her tooth, she grabs her mouth. Like,
yeah.
And then when she fixes the tooth, she grabs her mouth again. In this, I wouldn't grab my kid's mouth like that.
No, you wouldn't. None of us would grab anybody's face like that. I do think that there's a sense of fear, though, for her. I mean, she is the grand high hostess of this whole thing. It's happening at her house on her watch, right? With her commander upstairs. She has the biggest spotlight on her. I mean, even when everything is going on, the dentist wife is like, don't worry about it, Paula. Like, I'll help. Like, people definitely felt like they needed to rush in and try to show that they were of use to Paula, because Paula was showing some status here. And, they were very clear that the fact that Becca's dad is a dentist is going to be a detriment to her, and getting paired with someone who is considered a more quality commander. So it makes sense to me that then they made the mom like try to be like, I can help, I can do something. All of that, to see all of the mothers have that level of fear of everything going just right. I mean, first of all, I can appreciate it, honestly, having been a hostess lots of times in my life. I mean, you've seen me get extremely stressed out when something's going to happen. If we have people who we never have over, I'm very worried about everything going just so. And I'm not worried about getting my tongue cut out or my finger cut off, or I have to go live in the barn or something. But yet I put that amount of pressure on myself. So this kind of life, I think that for a simple tea party to become such a pressure cooker was a wonderful illustration of how much stress everyone at every level is living under, even down to the ants, which I want to talk about them a little bit because there were some little moments there.
Right. It started with the procession from the expensive cars into the building. Did you happen to catch when Lydia winked at Agnes?
I did. And I am like, okay, all right, okay. Like I love Aunt Lydia. When she shuts down Aunt V and is like, oh, for God's sake, let them eat their cake. Like, I love that so hard. And also, it let us know, as viewers know, that Aunt V is on her radar and she is feeling a certain kind of way. Maybe those other aunts got back to Lydia. Maybe it was through third, fourth, fifth party that, hey, Aunt V was like saying some snotty remarks about you at lunch. But I would say that Aunt V is coming off like she is on Lydia's shit list. And I hope that continues to play out. I hope there's more going on there. One thing that I found pretty fascinating about this whole tea party, and it wasn't exactly aunt related, but because of the like the time when Lydia says like, dig in, girls, and she's had some liners like that, like when they did the ceremony and she goes, get in the water, rub-a-dub-dub. Like, she's got these moments where she kind of takes some of the seriousness out of the moment, which is endowed like to a T, like she did it in The Leftovers too, where there'd be these moments where she would speak so either like throw in some F-bombs, or she would just speak so casually and sort of outside the regular dialogue that it would like break the whole moment. The tension would be broken. I also thought they did that with the music this time. We've been clocking the music this whole time. We write it in our notes every time. We may not mention it every time, but we picked up on the California Dreamin', we picked up on the Blondie, we picked up on all the things that they've been doing so far. But this music was, and I think you can read into this, I think it's very similar to the background music that they play on Desperate Housewives way back when. If you guys ever watched that, so I guess it's a sitcom, maybe dramedy from a while back, and it would play this bouncy, boppy, boop, 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 kind of weirdly whimsical music. But it was definitely like, if you knew the name of that show as Desperate Housewives, and then you're looking at this group who are desperately wanting to make a good impression, all of them, I thought that was like a funny little thing. And if they didn't make that connection, if that's not what they intended, then this viewer was just playing and enjoying what they were doing. But I loved all of that.
The whimsy couldn't last forever. And I agree that it was sort of like a counterpoint to the seriousness of what they were doing. But it seemed like once the girls sat down at the tables and they served the cake, it seemed like finally things had kind of let up, but not so fast.
This whole bride in her tooth situation. Now, first of all, we're very familiar with that because of Mardi Gras. I'm familiar with the idea of whoever finds the baby in the cake, like it's like a good luck thing, it's good fortune, that type of stuff. You had done some research on that. There was a whole lot of different meanings from like Victorian times, where like small silver or gold charms were baked into the cakes. Again, it's like a Southern tradition in New Orleans. There's different charms that are put into the cake. Like if you find the ring, you're the next to get married. If you find the horseshoe, it's good luck. If there's a heart, love will come. An anchor is like hope or future adventures. A thimble or a button, now this is a sad one, is the old maid, which is that's their phraseology, but it's sort of like the idea that you're never going to get married. And if you find a little money bag, that's like a prosperity type thing. So we were familiar with this idea. The idea that it was porcelain, though, holy smokes. I mean, it's normally plastic and it wouldn't hurt your teeth. But how much did your heart just sink when you had the realization that, oh my God, she's going to have to go to the dentist?
Think of all of the steps that went into that. The episode starts with seeing the bride getting tossed into the batter. So it had to survive the baking, the cutting, the distribution, and finally make its way into Agnes to break her tooth.
And actually break her tooth, because, I mean, she could have possibly seen it with her fork and, hit it with her fork and not had it hit her tooth, like all the things. You're right. How many things had to happen for us to end up back at the dentist? My heart sank because, you've talked to me a lot about what's in the book, do you want to share that part?
The dentist is creepy in the book, too. And dark stuff happens to the dentist because it's not a very well-kept secret what he's up to. It's handled in a way in the book that I don't know if it's going to be the same thing in the show. I kind of wonder if Daisy might be instrumental in giving the dentist his comeuppance, because they could do it the same as as they did in the book, but with a different character, which could be Daisy. But yeah, his tastes run very young. Like he's not doing that same thing to the older women.
Okay. So one of the things that I appreciated is that they did set the scene in terms of watching everybody get dressed. And we didn't know how important it was going to be to watch everybody get dressed because they actually show Agnes tying her camisole, like under her like underclothing. And we watched her actually do that at the beginning of the episode, tie each bow. And I didn't exactly catch that, or I didn't clock it in the right way until, of course, at the end when she's at her dressing table and, you know, we see that obviously some of them are not tied at all. And we all know what this means. I have to give it to the show that I thought that they handled that very gracefully because I understand what they're trying to tell us. And for all the amount of just in our face abuse and brutality and torture, I thought this was a pretty clever and elegant way of giving us the information, perhaps a little bit softer for some people. I mean, I know that when it comes to like abuse storylines, I don't know if you should be watching The Testaments or Handmaids at all. I don't know if you could make it through here without being severely triggered by a lot of stuff that happens. But I thought they tried to handle it very carefully. And I, as a viewer who don't like to see everything in my face, really appreciated that because even her with the laughing gas part on her face, turning and like staring at the door and having the doctor go over and shut the door and take off his coat, that was enough from the hair on every part of my body to be standing on end. Like I did not need to see more. What did you think about the way they handled all that?
Very tasteful, given the age of the actress, the age of the character, and it was effective in telling us everything we needed to know. They showed us her putting on that camisole, and we didn't know that it was going to lead us to something later on. But the way they put it together, I think that's a pretty good job on
I think they did a great
their
job.
part.
I agree totally. So we have a little bit of cleanup to do here with just sort of like moments that we had that we need to make sure that we highlight to make sure we caught everything in the episode. One of the things that I do want to comment on is the relationship between Becca and Agnes. We've been watching it and paying attention and sort of putting our little notes on our bulletin board about, okay, you know, this seems like Becca's really conflicted about what's going on. Her face seems sometimes very concerned, very even kind of mean or upset at times towards Agnes, but then this time, and also very smiley and best friendly at other times, and she just seems really like she's got a lot of feelings inside. This time when they were practicing the dance, I was definitely starting to feel like, are there romantic feelings here? Is there something more between, at least from Becca's side? The part where she kind of pulls her hand back real fast and is like, I think you got it. That all has a lot of vibes of like, is Becca maybe feeling like the reason why she doesn't want to get married is she actually has romantic feelings towards girls? Is that what's going on here? I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% willing to put my flag in it because I kind of feel like they're young and this is new and she's so frightened and so scared that I don't want to be misreading anything. But I do think the music that they laid over the top, the way that she pulls her hand back really fast, I think we were 100% supposed to put that on the board as like okay, this is now a possibility. And I think even there was a couple of other moments where they were talking really close to each other's faces, which you could or could not say, is this a romantic thing or is this just best friends and they're young girls and this is how they act? Not sure, but willing to put it on the board as like, I'm open to whatever they're trying to show us here. What do you think about the part that we were talking about, about the chocolate? Daisy does get the chocolate to Garth, and this is opening some other information about what Mayday's up to.
I think that's an interesting bit because through one of these conversations, while Garth is trying to convince Daisy to not leave, he basically admits that he isn't sure what she's there to do, just that it's important and it's his job to help her do it. The idea that she's snooping around and trying to find clues of this or that is interesting. I wonder if that's her own initiative or if she was told to do that kind of thing. Maybe she was, because why else would she sneak into the commander's office?
He had asked her a little bit earlier about travels, about if she knew about where the one commanders, and she's like, I don't know who that is. She's like, Shunammite's dad. Like, did she mention anything about, like his travels and stuff? So I think she was probably going over to his desk, maybe just to peep an eye on like his day planner, calendar, something like that, see if there's any sort of reference to any visits anywhere. It could be for a lot of reasons. It could be for, economic supply chain, breaking a supply chain or messing up some sort of diplomacy between two countries or intervening in some way between two countries. It also could be if we knew that he's traveling on the 30th to this country, assassination stuff, those types of things could happen too. So I think that there's like a lot of different things that we can figure out. I mean, I think if you figure out any country who's maybe being soft with Gilead, that would be really helpful information, because like he said, Garth was really surprised at the writing on the packaging because he thought that Japan had sanctions on Gilead, meaning like he was like confused at like why in the world would, like, they aren't supposed to be in a good place. So what is this about, So maybe there's some sort of like figuring out what's going on behind the scenes, who the supporters are, who aren't, around the world, maybe where some safe places are.
The geopolitical game was sort of interesting texture in the first show, but never really that important, except for the relationship between the United States, Gilead, and Canada. Those were the only ones that we really cared about.
Right. I mean, but I gotta say, one of the episodes that I actually liked the best was, do you remember when they had the people come? And specifically, I remember from Mexico, they were there.
Yeah.
And they were like having like visiting like delegates from other places. I found that to be one of the most interesting episodes, just because it was so world building. We were finding out what was going on, what were the concerns of other countries, what was going on worldwide. So you could get a sense of whether Gilead was really this isolated place, or was this sort of thinking going on all over the place. So I liked that. And I think it does open our eyes to like what's going on in Japan and what are they talking about over here.
It makes me wonder about the status of the United States, given that it seemed like the United States was trying to assert whatever influence it had left in bringing military assets into, we thought, Boston. However, with the radio-free Boston transmission existing and then being cut off, neither of those two things makes it sound like we were able to hold it.
I'm going to keep saying disrupted. I don't want to think that Radio Free Boston was cut off. I just want to think it was quiet for that night or disrupted for that night. I can understand why maybe not. They can't transmit every single night, because otherwise they would probably get caught immediately somewhere. So it makes sense that maybe it's not every night, maybe it's every 3 days, maybe it's once a week. So I'm going to say disrupted, because I got to have hope here. Definitely. So another little bit that I felt like I wanted to hit upon was how much we think that Paula's nitpicking of Agnes is going to come to some sort of head, because I feel like they went out of their way. Now, they were in Paula's house, so there was a whole lot of Paula time in this episode. But from complaining about Agnes's hair to, like you said, grabbing her mouth to, making snide comments about her mother's weak genes and a rebellious streak, and just all these snotty comments that Penny was even being like, I loved when she was like, I see Paula's still a blessing. Like, I freaking love that. Like, I love friends like that who like see it and say a snotty remark. Even we have Daisy even, saying like remarks about Paula. What is going on? Do we think that is this just going to be like a subplot, in each story where it's like, yeah, and there's also this Paula character who's just always chirping in the background? Or is this going to build? Are we seeing it enough and more and more and more? And the comments went from gawky to like, I don't know, like 10 comments in this episode, to where, Agnes might be pushed to do something or say something, or maybe her father will hear something, or I'm not sure what. Do you think this is building to anything?
I bet so. Maybe not where we're looking, because it's never really been an issue in the past, but it seems like Paula's comments this week are kind of racist.
Oh, I agree. The hair comment,
yeah.
1,000 billion%. Yes. I sat back when I heard that. I was like, Paula, you are you are being way too freaking much here. And even that she had slightly commented on it, and really actually Agnes did, because she said she had had a new Martha when I think it was Shu who commented that her hair looked nice that day. And it was way on episode 1. And she's like, oh, I have a new Martha. Now, the new Martha happens to be black, and so would perhaps be better at knowing how to style black hair in a better way than, say, maybe Rosa, right? I don't know. It doesn't have to be true, but perhaps. So yeah, I picked up that racism stuff too and was like, what the hell, Paula? Like, what are we doing here? Is that gonna come up? Is that an issue?
I kind of feel like racism is like an issue too many in this world. I mean, I'm sure it exists, but for a television show, it seems like a lot of bases to cover in terms of what they want to say and how they want to say it. Maybe it'll come up. Maybe it is actually racism, but will it be like a theme that lasts forever?
Or like, can you get in trouble for it? Like, is it something that's frowned upon in Gilead? I can't tell. I'm not sure. To me, it feels like racism would be tolerated because we're going back to like sort of the Nazi kind of equation of the things. And surely, yes, obviously racism was a part of that. So I'm unsure what their society says about that kind of stuff, because we do have characters. I mean, Aunt V is Asian. We have certainly just different races, all different races. The girl who slapped the tea out of her Martha's hand is black, and I don't believe any of the moms were black. So that would be a mixed race family. So I don't know where we're going with this. Like, what is going on? And are we supposed to hone in on it? Or is this just like Paula is nasty and takes cheap shots and makes you feel like shit about anything you could possibly be remotely self-conscious about? So for teenage girls, that would be hair. That would be your body looking gawky. That would be your posture. All this stuff that she keeps nagging on is really universally a teenage girl thing that, like, if you're harassing them, I mean, even I happen to be white, but if my parents picked on hair stuff, I mean, hair is a big deal in my parents' household, and having your hair look nice was a big freaking deal. I don't know if that's where we're going, but I leaned into the racism too, especially because of the new Martha talk. That's what made me think like, oh, okay, maybe that's what we were supposed to draw there with the hair and the new Martha. I'm curious about Agnes's culminating feelings about things like Paula. It seems like things are changing between her and Becca. I'm not quite ready to jump on what exactly is going on between her and Becca, but she even said, like, I thought you were mad at me. In another episode, I thought you were mad at me because I was like sort of, kind of stealing your thunder or like taking your moment away or whatever by intruding on your season. That friendship being strained at all also feels fairly new. And so I'm wondering, if you have this mom who's nagging at you, your best friend in the world feels distant and strained. You were close to your dad, and it's clear that relationship is now distant. You've got this dentist. Now you've got this incident that has gone on at more than one, we believe. Does this mean that we're watching Agnes ramp up to some sort of explosive moment?
I think it's going to take more ramping to get her to have an explosive moment. Like with the dentist, I think she's got to tell somebody. Maybe Daisy, maybe Aunt Lydia. But,
right, and it was clever to make it Becca's dad because that's the most obvious person for her to run and tell, her best friend. But because it's Becca's dad, you sort of take that out of the equation. See what I mean about the, like, you're taking away her comforts, you're taking away the people who could be her allies. What does that mean? Where does that leave her with?
I agree that I don't want to commit to the idea that there's some sort of budding romantic connection between the two. They're very young. But also, in their world, that is probably one of the scariest situations to find yourself in, is if you don't view the world heterosexually, then...
Well, and in Gilead, they call it gender traitors. So
yes.
in case that comment got by you, because it was within these last 4 episodes, they said, and you gender traitors, you know what happens to them. They didn't exactly spell out what a gender traitor was. So again, if you didn't watch Handmaids, again, I don't know what you're doing, that is a gay person. And so I feel like they were kind of laying some ground there, maybe with us, but it was very, very subtle and very quiet. And because Becca has had so many different expressions and responses, and the dress fittings being so uncomfortable, and me and you being like, is something happening at the dress fitting? Like, is there something uncomfortable that's happening there that we're missing? Again, now that we feel like her dad is probably molested her at some point in time, or maybe just started to, because she is also just coming of age where you're being viewed as a woman in this society. Like, maybe it's new to her. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, I think Becca is like a complete knot of feelings. Like, and you could pull a thread and you could get different conclusions, but I feel like I want to look at her in totality and be like, there's a lot going on with this girl, and she may very well know what's going on at her dad's office, and it may be happening to her at home, and she could be having all kinds of feelings that we may be misreading, or we may not be connecting the dots quite yet.
We need more data on Becca, and we only get it through how she interacts with Agnes. So if Agnes doesn't see it, then I don't think we're going to see it.
Do you think that this dentist plotline is, besides the wife plotline and like, you know, becoming a, getting matched with a commander, obviously that's like the overarching plotline, but do you think this dentist plotline is something that will be resolved this season? Like, it's going to come to a head and come to a conclusion in this season?
I do.
I hope it is, because I do not want it to extend far, and I want this guy to be caught and punished in a real way. So I'm hopeful that we come to a conclusion. Is there anything about this episode that surprised you? Like, we're almost at halfway now. I do feel like we're moving pretty good. The pace seems like it's not boring. I don't feel like we're being sluggish about passing out the details. And I mean, we have Daisy and Agnes simultaneously parallel freaking out about what's going on in their lives. Like, it is coming to a head for me. I think episode 5 could very well bring a moment of huge realizations or information passing or something where things start to be like, oh my God. Do you have any concept of how many seasons this is supposed to be?
I don't.
So not knowing that, we can't really have a good idea of like when and if Agnes figures out anything about Daisy. Like, could that possibly happen in this season? Or if they're going multiple seasons, like, is the end of season 1, she's got an inkling that Daisy maybe isn't just your average Pearl girl.
That seems like a fair way to leave us on a cliffhanger. Like, what would she do with that knowledge? Rather than a week-to-week cliffhanger, that would be a good seasonal cliffhanger.
One of the aunts made the comment that the Pearl girls just become econo wives for the most part. I'm kind of curious if, like, with Agnes getting married, we're going to lose the connection between Daisy and Agnes unless Daisy was somehow placed in her house as like staff, like Martha or something else. I don't know what else she really could be besides Martha. So things have to either slow down or speed up. Do you know what I mean? Like, either she's not getting married this season, a commander's not picked for her, or maybe a commander is picked, but season 2 is all the preparations leading up to a wedding and an actual having a ceremony, maybe episode 5 of season 2, right? Like a mid-season big moment. But see what I mean? Like, if leaving the school, why would a Pearl girl and a wife have anything to do with each other anymore?
I can tell you that the way that question was handled in the book has already been kind of blown up by the show. So I don't think we're going to be doing it the same way as the book. However, I think that there is one nugget from the book that might translate into this situation. And the shortest way to say that is they get out of it. Agnes and Becca both get out of becoming wives.
Well, that is certainly a head scratcher. And like, how does that happen? Fascinating. Okay, well, I think we want to leave our listeners on that note, because that should get you guys thinking and sending in some questions. Go join that Facebook group, because there's definitely lots of conversation going on over there. We keep you guys from spoilers by keeping all the conversation episode by episode on the posts. So if you've only seen episode 1, just go into episode 1 post and you can get in there and talk all about it and not be spoiled about 2, 3, 4. And it goes on every time like that, so that we don't let a bunch of spoilers onto the main feed for quite some time. So go check that out. And I think we're going at a really good pace for this show, so I'm very eager for episode 5. This is Caroline.
And this is Paul. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And if the review is nice, we'll even read it on the podcast. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for listening.
On Clubhouse.